Today on radio KD8TTE, we're going to talk about net control. Stick around. So perhaps you have been listening on amateur radio and you've heard nets, that is, meetings of radio operators at the same time on the same channel. We're going to talk about how to run a radio net today, and we're going to do this with the idea of getting you trained up so that you can be a net control operator. So the learning objectives that we have for this discussion are going to be 7 in number. We want to understand the difference between a directed and a free net. We want to understand the roles that stations play in a net, common pro words and pro signs that are used in various nets, how to call the net, how to dispatch traffic, how to get unstuck if you, as net control, don't know what to do, and then, of course, the administrative work to follow through and make sure that all of the business is getting done properly. Now, the first time that you are a net control operator, you're going to have problems. Let's just get that out of the way. The very first time that I ran an amateur radio net, I literally was using a handheld radio. It was standing up next to a window where I had taped an antenna that was going to be there so that it could get connected to the repeater that we were on, and everything went wrong. The radio fell over, it pulled the antenna down, the battery died. All of these things happened in the first 5 minutes of the net. The big thing is just to maintain your composure and work the problem. And remember, you don't have to hold down that push to talk button. You can say wait, get yourself organized, make the battery change, get the antenna back to where it needs to be, whatever you have to do to get back to business. Don't panic. It's going to happen to you, so best get it out of the way early on, and then you won't need to worry about it. The big thing that you should take away from this is that you can be a good net control operator. A lot of people hear what's going on there and can be intimidated by it. It's a big job. It's important. A lot of people will notice. Everybody's relying on you. All these things are true, but you can be a good net control operator if you want to. So let's talk about net organization first, because that's going to affect the sorts of things that you're doing as a net control operator. First of all, we have directed nets. These are what you typically hear in amateur radio. A directed net is where all stations will talk to net control or at the instruction of net control. In a free net, any station's allowed to talk to each other. They're allowed to call each other directly. There is no need for net control to allow someone to transmit. Now, net control in such nets is still responsible for maintaining circuit discipline. And that is an important distinction, directed nets and free nets. The second distinction has to do with open nets and closed nets. An open net is going to accept any station that has business for that net. You're welcome to join. A closed net is interested only in stations that are going to cover assigned roles. And that becomes something that you don't typically hear in local operations. So the kinds of roles that we have in a net will depend on the particular net in question. In any case, you have a net control operator. That's a station that has operational control of the session. That's who's responsible for saying somebody may transmit now, or that station is to take the message from some other station. Net control is not to be confused with the net manager. The net manager is an administrative function. A marker station is one that marks the frequency that can be used to help others find the frequency. On VHF and with repeaters and that sort of thing, we don't typically have these problems, but on HF, sometimes we have to work around interference or some kind of noise, and so a marker station can be useful for helping others to find that net. And so that'll be some transmission that happens typically before the net begins. Sometimes you'll hear things like a series of V's sent in Morse code. Da-da-da-da, 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 da-da-da-da. That kind of thing can be a marker. We also have relay stations. That is a station that is meant to receive transmissions from one station for the purpose of retransmission to another that is going to be typically on that same net. A representative, or a liaison is a station that will receive messages from this net to take them to other nets for relay, and can also bring messages from other nets or other organizations into the present net. Nets operate with procedure words if the net is controlled by voice, or if it's controlled by digital means, CW, or any type of radio telephone, radio telegraph, with procedure signals. Prowords and prosigns are not code or something that we do just because it sounds cool. They have precise meanings that allow for net operations to go smoothly. Different nets have different sets of prowords that they use, so we'll show some examples here, but we're not going to go into detail. That will be a subject for another video. So now on to how to call a net. Nets often prioritize on how to bring stations into the net. It depends on what their purpose is. Traffic nets, for example, typically call for stations with traffic. Some that are going to be establishing communications along a parade route might call based on the different locations on the route. In any case, each net is going to have some means of establishing how they want stations to come into the net. Closed nets with assigned positions have very little need for direction. In fact, it's possible for net control just to make a call and for all stations to enter into the net, as we'll show in just a moment. Open nets, which are typical in amateur radio, need to have a lot more direction. So as an example of the very tight net that I was talking about, if we have everybody with assigned positions, they know the order in which they are to respond, and so you can have net control make a single call, and each station will then reply in the proper order without further prompting. So you might hear something like, "Black Swan, this is KD8TTE, over." Next transmission comes back, "KD8TTE, this is N2LC, over." "KD8TTE, this is W8OMR, over." "KD8TTE, this is W8THV, over." And then we hear, "Black Swan, this is KD8TTE, roger, W8SGT, nothing heard, out." In this case, everyone has an assigned position, so we know their function and also the order in which they are to answer. As a consequence, there is no need for net control to make multiple transmissions to establish that net. In the example that we just gave, W8SGT is a designated station for this net, but we didn't hear a transmission, or net control in any case did not hear a transmission. So roger, that means I understand everybody who's supposed to be in the net, and then what follows is the exception. W8SGT, nothing heard, out. The net is now established, W8SGT has not yet entered the net. More typical is going to be an open net. So for example, the Central Ohio traffic net, it is a traffic net, so there is some structure, but it is open. So you'll typically hear Central Ohio traffic net. This is KD8TTE, stations with traffic. If we're operating in simplex as opposed to on the repeater, then we'll say over. And you might hear KD8TTE, this is N2LC with traffic, over. And then net control comes back. N2LC, this is KD8TTE, list your traffic, and so on. There is some back and forth there. And then net control goes back and asks again for more stations with traffic. The reason for this is in the open net, there probably isn't going to be an order established. And in any case, even if there is an order established, there will be a point at which there's going to be a need to open it up so that other stations are able to come in as well, since the net is open. The important thing to remember with all of this is that you need to check with your net to see what local procedure is. Every net exists for some purpose, and they are going to optimize their operations to serve that purpose. Some examples that we have include the Central Ohio Traffic Net. There's a script for that. The Black Swan Net has a script. The Ohio Single Sideband Net has a script. The 8 Region Net has a script. All of these are examples of the script that is used by the net control station to go through and make sure that the call-up is happening according to local procedure. It makes things a lot easier for net control. If you're just listening, you might not realize that that's what they're actually doing, but in fact, a lot of the net control job is simply reading the script, keeping track of what's going on, not having to remember a whole lot of stuff. So when it comes to the business of dispatching traffic, that is getting it from one station to another, that's the kind of thing that we see most often in traffic nets. So net control generally will know where the outlets are, that is, where a station can receive something that is supposed to be going to a particular location. That's the reason why traffic nets will often call up by geography, that you're going to be able to say, okay, this is in the general area of where I need to get this message to go. The big thing is that if you're in a traffic net, you don't want to auction off the traffic, and that's, anybody able to take one for Reynoldsburg, anyone for Reynoldsburg, anyone. It's far better to assign somebody. You want to just give them the traffic. KD8TTE, this is Alpha Alpha 8 Alpha Alpha Alpha, contact Kilo 3 Alpha Uniform X-ray receive Northeast 1. It's a clear instruction. It tells the station that needs to make the call what they're going to do exactly, what they are receiving. You can give that instruction clearly. That's the job of net control, is to keep things moving. There is business to be done. Follow through is also important. Net control has more work to do once the net has been closed. It's important to make sure that the appropriate records are compiled and produced. So what do you do if you're stuck? This is the big worry that everybody has about net control. First of all, nobody knows everything, even net control. You don't have to answer every question that's raised, just like with traffic. With a message, you assign another station to deal with it. So if, for example, you're on a net where you're supporting a public service event, and somebody has a question about what's supposed to happen over at mile 13, you don't need to be the one to solve that problem. You're not the one that needs to know the answer. Your job is to make somebody else responsible for getting that answer. You might be physically located in such a place that you're going to have to ask somebody there. There might be a director or something, some administrative person you need to talk to, or there might be another station on the net that would be at the right place to ask the question. In any case, you assign it. If somebody asks the question, all you got to do is say, Roger, out, and then you can talk to the person who's right there. Or if the answer is at some other location, you call that station and tell them to solve that problem, call back when they've got an answer, and you move on. If you're stuck and you don't know what to do, you can also assign a station to suggest something for you. K3AUX, this is KD8TTE, over. This is K3AUX. This is KD8TTE. Here's my situation. What do you think? Over. Now K3AUX might have an idea and explain something to me. Maybe K3AUX does not have an idea. Say, I don't know, I'm stumped. In any case, you can instruct somebody to provide you some options, or at least attempt to give you some options. And if you're really stuck, really stuck, you can even have somebody else take net control. The pro word for that is assume net control. So let's say that we have AA8. AAA is just stuck, or something is going on there. They just cannot handle the job at the moment for whatever reason. It's okay for that station to call me, for example, KD8TTE, this is AA8, AAA, assume net control, over. My response would be AA8, AAA, this is KD8TTE, I assume net control, out. Now KD8TTE is net control, and the business of the net can continue while whatever is happening over at station Alpha 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 can be taken care of. A few things to remember, especially when we're talking about COTN or other nets that are operating at the local level. Typically, going to be training nets. COTN specifically is a training net. No one gets everything right all the time, and everyone wants you to succeed. It's not like there's a bunch of people just, rubbing their hands together waiting for you to make a mistake so they can make fun of you. That's not the way that it works. Everyone wants you to succeed. The only way that you're going to get good at net control is to do it, and you have to do it a lot. So this isn't the kind of thing where, well, let me practice, let me get better, let me do whatever, and then I'll do it. You got to jump in. That's how you're going to get good. It is a perishable skill, so you also can't do this once a year and say, okay, I'm good, I know how to handle all of this. The more you do it, the better you're going to be. Of course, something that you've heard me say about training over and over again is that you fight like you train. So don't think that you're going to be able to handle some kind of very light duty, and then if there is a real problem, if there's a real emergency, you're going to rise to the challenge. That's not how it works. I talked about that a lot last year when we were talking about Black Swan 20, and the preparation is that Achilles told us that you do not rise to the level of your expectation, you sink to the level of your training. That is absolutely true. The other thing is that you can get additional help. You can ask for additional sessions that are just there to practice. Talk to your net manager about that. Ask if you can do that. Talk with other operators that you work with regularly. Will they help you? Of course they will. How do you know that? Well, you would help them, wouldn't you? Of course you would. That's the reason why we're all here training together. You can even do this off air. Just have everybody sit around a room. Sit around a picnic bench. You can just voice the procedure without even using radios at all. Once you've done that a few times, maybe you use some handhelds and then you spread out a little bit across the field. You can see each other, but you have to use the radio to hear each other. That's a way that you can practice without necessarily lighting up a repeater that's going to make your voice heard across 10 counties. But it is okay to make a mistake. That is going to happen. What's not okay is not trying to improve. If you make a mistake and you always laugh it off and oh ha ha ha, and you don't do anything about it, you don't try to improve, that's not okay. That's not really training. You want to get better. Everybody wants you to get better. We are all there to help each other get better, so take that initiative. Net control is never wrong. Now we say that because it's a good rule to keep things moving, but you also should ask for tips from experienced operators. There are people who have been through whatever it is that you're facing, so it's okay to ask, did I do that right? Is there a better way to do that? Any of those things are good discussion points after a net. So especially in training situations, you might run an operation and then at the end have a discussion, and that will help you to improve. Even though you're never wrong as net control, it can get better by hearing some improvements. Net control is never wrong is just a way for us to get everybody to follow the instruction and make sure the net operates efficiently. During the operation, net control is in charge. You need to tell people what to do. Don't ask them because it creates confusion. It means that there's more transmissions that need to happen. You tell them what to do. It is okay to ask a new operator if they're ready to take traffic, if they're ready for some function or whatever. But once that has been established, you tell people what to do. You give them instructions. You are being assertive, not aggressive, but assertive in your language. That's for the purpose of clarity. Don't be a jerk. I've got some references that I'll include down at the bottom of the video that will show standard operating procedures for the Central Ohio Traffic Net, the ARRL's Methods, Practices, Guidelines for National Traffic System Operation, the ARRL Field Resources Manual, the ARRL ARES Manual, and then also links to the Black Swan Net where we have training slides and so on, and of course the ACP Series 125 radio telephone procedures, 121 general instructions, and 131 the operating signals. So the way to use those references, because they're not always going to be exactly the same, is start with your local net. Whatever your local net says to do that. Now, if you're operating within a program such as an agency's AUXCOM program, or as part of ARES, or as part of NTS, If your local net doesn't cover the case, then you want to go to the program manual, which might specify. If you don't have something for that program, then you might want to fall back to the ACPs. Those are going to give you the most complete lists of signals, for example, the most complete list of prowords. And so those local nets and even your programs might not have an exhaustive list, and that's why you're going to use local so that you get the whatever's happening locally. That's the most common case. Work within the program if local doesn't cover it, and if that's not covered, then you go to the most broad thing that you can, which in the NATO countries is the ACP. All right, so that's the rundown on net control, what net control is about, and I'm going to also have a link into another video where we introduced the Buckeye Net Mixed mode. Buckeye Net Mixed is the predecessor to what is now the Black Swan Net, and in that you're going to hear instructions being given by voice. You're going to see some description of what's actually happening on screen, and I hope that that will help you to understand what net control is all about, and hopefully put your mind at ease if you are unsure about whether you can do it. You certainly can. Just jump right in, and those around you will be there to help. Of course, I'm always happy to answer questions, and you are welcome to contact me by WinLink at KD8TTE or by intranet at KD8TTE at pm.me. This is Radio KD8TTE out.